Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, we have a discussion on the distinction between southern rust and common rust on corn, as well as other disease pressures in the field. Check out Ken Ferrie's latest Boots in the Field report on pollination issues and tassel-wrapping. We talk about how our corn crop is looking. And stick around for Joe's Corny Jokes.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman. Welcome to Merschman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Ben and Lynn, and we have a lot to talk about this week. Who's going to start?
I think I can kick us off here. Fresh off the press, we have a article coming out of Iowa State talking about low levels of southern rust observed in Iowa. We've talked about this, probably mentioned it at least a couple different times over the past 2 to 3 to 4 weeks. We figured it was coming. It was observed in southern Illinois and even further south than that, and I figured it was just a matter of time before we were going to see it. So some of the key distinctions on southern rust versus common rust. So I got some pictures from our friends at Bear Crop Sciences, and wanted to throw that up there. And basically the difference being is the common rust, or if you wanted to tell a distinction between the two, common rust pustules are more dark and brick-like in structure, and they appear on the top surface of the leaf and the bottom surface of the leaf. So you actually have a pustule you can feel on the top versus the bottom. The southern rust pustules are a little bit more circular in design, and they only will have that rough appearance on the top side of the leaf. Common rust typically doesn't trigger the need for a fungicide application. You really have to get pretty intense exposure of that before yield is starting to be taken away. But southern rust can be fairly detrimental as it gets into the Iowa, northern Illinois, places that don't have as good of southern rust ratings on their hybrids. So when you look through the book, it's kind of apparent. You can see it, the 106 day, the 108 day, they're rolling in that 6 out of 9, getting closer to average or below average scoring. The 111 day kind of takes a step up. You're getting into that 7 rank on your southern rust, and then the 12, 13, 14, you're running 8 out of 9 rankings on those. So it's found at low levels at this point in time, but if we continue to get the southerly winds, and we continue to have, which looks like in the forecast, hot, humid conditions, that is the perfect environment for the southern rust to explode and continue to spread more pores, pustules, and start taking fields over.
And typically you'll find southern rust more in the upper part of the canopy.
Correct.
Common rust is typically found lower in the canopy. Yesterday in some scouting, I have seen some pustules. Like I said, you flip that leaf up, find it on both sides. It's common. What the question was is do I need to worry about that? In this particular field, even if it was southern, I'm not quite as concerned because fungicide application was made last week time frame. So Ben had a great analogy, and I'm stealing it. Fungicide is fungicide. It's not soap. So if you have tar spot pustules, rust pustules, we're gonna be able to hopefully neutralize that expansion, but we're not going to be able to wipe that clean off the leaf. So I think that is another reason, leading to the next problem that we're going to address, but it's a reason to get out there before application to kind of get a framework for what you're dealing with, and figuring out if, and I would say tar spot too, especially, it is extremely important, because as we get to the first application, fungicide applications, we're going to near that 3-week window here pretty quick. Now you just gauge how fast it's moving or expanding throughout the corn crop. But really, really important right now to get out and take a look at your field.
Yep. Find yourself a pin before application and go back to that same spot and see if the disease is progressing, if you've got it shut down, or how effective your fungicide applications are. So,
yeah, once out of 5-year events are recurring almost 3 out of 5 years now. So, but that's back to we talked about it before the camera, why probably southern Iowa is dealing with this. You alluded to southern Illinois, Arkansas. That last round of big wind event, rain event moved from the southwest up to the northeast and brought the inoculum with it. So that's another reason, I guess, to pay attention to our weather patterns. If we switch and stuff coming out of the north more, maybe we don't have to worry about it pushing, but if we're going to continue to get southerly winds and rain, definitely need to keep an eye on it.
Yep. Bermuda High is open, and it is pushing wind flow up through that area. So that was wanted to throw a map up there too and show all the counties that they have highlighted in the state of Iowa and the rest of the country as well. So take a look at the Crop Protection Network for the tar spot map and the southern rust map. Those are excellent tools that our universities that are involved in ag collaborate on together.
Yeah, any place that's had a lot of rain, I know in there's quite a few belts that have 2.5, 3 inches. I mean, those are going to be prime areas for disease. I mean, you really set up the perfect scenario, so you got to get ahead of it.
Yep. And I think, not to add insult to injury, but why I probably get more concerned on this is we're entering that phase of gray leaf on its own, not terrible. Southern on its own could be, tar spot on its own can be terrible, but now we've got 3 that they're all going to compound on each other if you're not taking a proactive approach in managing the crop.
Yeah, I was actually out scouting fields one morning, probably Wednesday morning, Thursday, well, it would have been Thursday morning this week, and I actually had to stop and turn back around and throw this picture up there, but it's the first time I've seen northern corn leaf blight in our area in a long time. I know eastern Illinois had quite a bit of northern corn leaf blight last year at this time frame, or maybe even a month later, but it's a good time to be out there scouting and seeing what's out there, because things like this can be detrimental, especially when they're compounding on top of each other.
Yep.
So
yeah, you can't stop it, you can just slow it down.
Right. Yep. So the next thing that has been popular in the media cycle, the ag media cycle this past week, has been tassel wrapping and some pollination issues due to tassel wrapping. And Ken Ferrie, we're going to put a link to his podcast, his Boots in the Field podcast. It sounds like it's a fairly expansive issue with not hitting our nick correctly. And I guess what tassel wrapping is when there's a stress event that happens on the rapid growth stage of corn. So you're talking from the V7 to the V12, 13, 14 time frame. If there's a stress event that happens during that time frame, sometimes a corn plant will hold very tightly on its last flag leaf or the last leaf before the tassel emerges. It will hold tightly to that tassel, and it will not allow for that tassel to expand and open. And you actually have pollen starting to drop when it's sitting inside of that last tassel leaf. So he talked about it. There's lots of articles that he's been quoted in talking about it. It seems like it's a problem from western Iowa, potentially a problem. There's been reports on it from western Iowa all the way through Indiana.
Even in Kansas.
Yep, Kansas, Missouri as well. And it seems like it is affecting products that are main branch specific tassels. And when I talk main branch specific tassels, that means the majority of the pollination happens, the majority of the pollen drop happens from the main branch. So you have a much taller single branch, and then you'd have 3 or 4 auxiliary branches on your tassels that release the pollen. And those are the ones that are affected a little bit more heavily. And just to be completely blunt, there is a little bit more of that style of branch coming out of the Corteva genetics platform.
Yeah, the tassel. And it's kind of like, if you relate it to soybeans, it'd be the thin line soybean versus the full bush. The
Right.
full bush is doing a better job pollinating because it's got more branches, where the thin line is, because of that tightness of that leaf, it just wasn't letting that pollen out of that grip. You know, the leaf was gripping onto that tassel and just not letting it out, letting that pollen out.
Yep. So
Corn snuggie.
The corn snuggie, yeah. So I've been getting lots of phone calls. I think it seems from my observations, it seems like it is in a fairly tight window, a planting date window, that is affected by this. When you get over into Illinois, they're talking the 14th through the 16th, 17th time frame
Of April.
Planted corn. And from what I have observed here semi-locally, it is more of a 12th through maybe even the 10th of April through the 13th, 14th. So we have had some misses and some nicks, and I can throw some pictures up, but it seems like it's very isolated to the earliest planted corn in the area. So
how do you evaluate? In other words, I want to check my field. I want to know if I have a problem with pollination. What's the right way to do it?
Well, the right way to do it is to get out into the field in a few different spots and pick 10 continuous corn plants. Take the ears off, husk them back, and see what kind of fill you've had once you get to the milk stage is probably the correct time to do it, because you can see pollination misses when you're in blister, but that doesn't necessarily account for the late pollen shed that you can sometimes get those to fill back in. Spent quite a bit of time, like I said, Wednesday, looking at this, and I guess we'll just throw some pictures up here and talk about it.
You got the video too from Ken Ferrie that we're connecting here. He does a really good job explaining it too.
Yep, absolutely. So in the picture that I'm throwing up here, we have an April 13th planted field of 2512 C-30, and we have an April 15th field planted of 2512 C-30. And you can see there's probably 2 ears out of here that look pretty tough, but a lot of the other ears made it through pollination just fine. Joe and I sat down and kind of made our estimations on, worst case scenario, probably a 10% yield loss. There's probably 15% kernel loss, but that doesn't mean 15% yield loss, because the kernels that did pollinate will get bigger and they will close the gap in between what we're looking at. So we had a little bit of scatter fill last year based on heat and planting date and some other things that we were looking at, and they were still fields that were yielding in the 260, 270 range. Yeah. So I'm not terribly concerned. We probably took a little bit of the cream off the top of the crop that we're looking at here, but we're not looking at total crop failure. We're not looking at lack of kernel fill like what we saw west of St. Louis last year, where they were extremely dry. They hit some 90+ degree days and they didn't have anything. Like when they pulled 10 years back, they might have 1 year that pollinated correctly. So I don't think this is the end of the world, but it's something that we need to be aware of, and it's something that guys need to consider why you plant the 111 day, why you plant the 112 day, why you plant the 113 day. You spread out your planting dates, you spread out your risk, because the 111 day made it through just fine in those same planting day windows, and the 113 day made it through just fine as well. 114 day over in Clinton, Illinois, I had guys send me pictures of that, and it made it through just fine, and it looks absolutely excellent. So want guys to be aware of what we're seeing out there, but don't want to raise any alarm bells and scare people away from products that are super high yielding, because that's one of the things that, if you listen to Ken's podcast, he talks about, that it seems to be affecting the hybrids that are the really, really heavy hitters and the super high yielders, and you don't want to take those out of the lineup by any stretch of the imagination, but you do want to diversify risk.
So even with the problem, based on last year's experience that Lynn, you had, you're still capable of raising the highest yield you ever raised.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's you mentioned that we had some issues last year, which is really ironic, because that was the later planted corn that ran into some issues. Just timing. I mean, this is all timing. Obviously, the reports out there, you mentioned the Corteva, but other brands are having some issues too. And I would take a step further in the timing. Some of it is planting date, but some of it, like on our side of the road, we had very similar planting dates, but I think you guys were able to miss some rains, accumulate some more GDUs, where we did not. So our planting date was the same, but our emergence date wasn't the same, and everything's, perfectly fine. But yeah, no, last year I had a little bit of issues in the 113 day with some scatter fill. Related to the same thing. It was the first silks that pushed out didn't get pollinated, so had some scatter fill in the lower part of the cob, and yeah, almost a 105 bushel difference from the last time that field was corn.
Higher, right?
Higher, yes. Mm-hmm. Anywhere from some of the lower yielding areas was 240, and the highest was 270 to 300. So if I have to deal with scatter fill to get 270 or 300 bushel corn, I'll be okay. I want everyone to know we're fine. So that's where related to that, when talking about silks, one thing anecdotally that I've seen, and you can debate me on this, but if somebody wants to go out and look, and if they're not really willing to go back, if you really don't want to walk all that far and shuck stuff off, anecdotally, it looks like the ones that have really long silks that you're seeing, take a look at those. If you see it, that seems to be something that's correlated back to that. It's just pushing long silks, but like I said, I'm walking through the fields over on our side of the country, and the only thing that I found that maybe has a little bit of scatter fill on the 112 day is, it's very unfortunate, but there's a 200 bushel second ear sitting underneath there that the first ear I think just blocked the ear leaf blocked some of the pollen, but it looks fantastic, and yeah, this stuff compensates so well related to that, and where you showed that picture. Yeah, if you probably went from 325 to 300, I think the person will be okay. It'll be all right. But it is important. Ken mentions it, and I do want to reiterate that fact. If you're not going to listen to that article, if you do have a problem and you're a little bit nervous about it, that is a decent time to evaluate how you move on to the rest of the season. If you think you're going to have a yield hit, maybe you won't do a second fungicide application. Maybe you change your storage contracts or marketing plans, but for the most part, I think when to your picture's point, it's not that consistent throughout. Even the small sample size that we have there. Just run your race; it'll be fine.
Correct. And I guess I don't think we talked about. We're kind of skipping around here, but the stress that happens during that rapid growth stage. That the corn plant is going through, there's lots of different stresses that can happen, and he talks about 4 or 5 of them, and one of them could be herbicide carryover. That's probably not the case on what we're looking at in our individual situation. One of them could be rootless corn syndrome from that or during that rapid growth stage, or where we're trying to get your nodal roots set, but they were extremely dry during that time frame, and that's not very conducive because roots will not grow through air. They have to have moisture to establish. So it's probably not what we were looking at there. The third way that he was talking about was extreme temperature changes from daytime highs to nighttime lows. That's probably a little bit more where I'm kind of considering, because we did have rapid corn growth syndrome where we were seeing the whorls tighten. I mean, that is caused by that extreme change in temperature. And I'm not seeing a direct correlation to the plants that have the wavy, wrinkled appearances on the leaves. I'm not seeing a direct correlation to those plants worse than anything else. But we were seeing very cool nights, complemented by warm days in that time frame as well. So that's probably what led to the stress that we're seeing in this individual instance. But again, it's spreading risk and making sure you have a wide either you have a wide planting date portfolio, or you have multiple hybrids that handle stresses and pollinate at different times.
And that's the key there is pollinating at different times. What I'd like to point out too is especially if you're dealing with multi companies, look at the flowering date on your hybrids.
Your GDU count.
Your GDU count. You don't necessarily look at I planted 111 to 114. We've talked about it before, but if you look at our 108 day. It has a very late flowering GDU count in comparison to some of the products even ahead of it. So as you're looking at that, don't necessarily just look at the maturity as your diversification. You need to look at the flowering date as well. And if it's something that's really, really causal for some heartburn, might look at diversifying even within a field setting that, we talked about it. We don't like splitting planters, but maybe you throw 2 different hybrids out in the field and try to get a window there to help out. But
Hefties talk about it all the time. They split their planters all the time for this exact reason, and they'll do 105 day and 109 day in the same field just to make sure that they have that pollen shed for an elongated period.
Yep. Yeah. The only downside is if you have one ailment in one of those strips, how do you spray it? How do you rescue it? But just keep in mind now, the farmers are so efficient in putting their crop in big planters, high speed. We're actually concentrating our risk more because of these bigger planters, because we can cover more acres. So if you're not diversifying with your hybrid selection and your maturities, you're increasing your risk. The same thing goes for soybeans too. It's that situation where you're either 100% right or 100% wrong. If you get that wrong rain or something when it comes to replant and things like that. So just remember, the faster you can plant, the more you need to think about stress mitigation in your portfolio of products.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and go back to even that. Feed your plant. Make sure it doesn't have a bad day. If it's not having a bad day, some of these problems just kind of take care of itself.
Yeah, mitigate the stress, because every stress has some kind of compound somewhere else.
Yep. I was also looking at some of our later planted corn, and many guys know the trick on how to figure out whether you pollinated or not. I take the ear off the leaf with a husk on it, and then I take my pocket knife, cut off to the very base of that corn plant, roll the husk off the outside of the corn plant, and then tip it upside down, watch the silks drop, and then you can see what has effectively already pollinated versus what hasn't. And we had some this is going to be in the teens, somewhere in the May teens time frame, planted corn, and it's catching right up with the stuff that was planted in April. So it seems like that stuff is pollinating very well, and I'm excited to see what we see in a late planted versus an early planted scenario this year.
Yeah, if you've ever raised sweet corn, you try to space it out, and we've done it. 3 weeks difference, it ends up being 3 or 4 days difference when it comes to harvesting.
Right.
That later planted material always seems to catch up. So.
Yep.
Some tall corn out there. I was kind of joking before filming with Joe, but I sent you that text message. If anybody has 2512 out in their field and is going to scout to look at either pollination or later on to look at fill, wear a motorcycle helmet or a football helmet. That stuff it's just an absolutely beautiful ear that's going to be thrown out there if we get any fill. Thank goodness a lot of these cornhead companies have gone to poly instead of tin, because there's going to be some dented tin snoots out there from this stuff. It's just incredible at the amount of potential that we have out there right now. Brother-in-law sent you and I a picture of the 113 day. Ryan's 6'1", long arms, and it's going from his wrist to his elbow, and just coming out of pollination. So we have a lot left to fill, but locally here, I think not to rub it in anyone's face, but we've got a great potential to have a huge corn crop, and it's amazing that the third year in a row that we could do that. So
keep our fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, we're coming. Hard times do, but we'll take advantage. And it goes back to all the homework done, originators you've done on providing product,
seed treatment,
everything that's going into this. It just we can have an episode alone of starting at 106 and going to our 115, and just haven't seen bad corn out there.
And the sophistication of our knowledge of how to manage the corn is getting more and more sophisticated. In other words, we're taking care of a lot of details that we used to plant it, maybe split the nitrogen, and that was call it a day. But we have so many other options with biologicals, and fungicides are so much better. I mean, it's changing. Things are changing fast.
Yeah, we were talking about, they had a Brant research day, and Alex Harrell, the United States soybean record holder, was talking about how Veltima, with a product like our NKBS in combination, alone they don't do this by themselves, but the Veltima with a NKBS style product, which NKBS would do this because it's part of this other product, but when those two products get used together, it literally reduces the canopy temperature by 10 degrees by itself. And that's a huge deal when you're running in the 90s, 95 degree days. I mean, you need that plant to cool back down to make sure it's retaining flowers, pods, increasing fill. It's all extremely important.
If we're going to keep this up, I'm going to see if they make it in a shake.
Yeah.
I need my canopy temperature to go down.
It might work. You might have a new invention there.
Yeah, maybe we'll grow some hair too.
Yeah, well, I'll be interested in that one.
Perfect.
Anything else?
Fun week.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. Can't wait till next week, right? Well, when it comes to corny jokes, as you know, I've been slacking off here, but so I want back to the basics. Get the worst ones that I can possibly have because I don't want to disappoint anybody. Okay, so I got quite a litany of ones here, and I'll run through them. So I'll give you some extra bonus ones because it was a stressful week for a lot of farmers. Okay, what did the seal with one fin say to the shark? What did the seal with one fin say to the shark? If the seal is broken, do not consume. Okay. A century ago, two brothers decided it was possible to fly. Did you know that? A century ago, two brothers decided it was possible to fly. And as you can see, they were right. All right.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a man wearing pajamas on a bicycle and a guy wearing a tuxedo on a unicycle? Attire. Okay. I told you I'm going back to the basics, getting some really bad ones here. I don't know if you knew this or not, but I got hit in the head with a can of Coke this morning. Don't worry, I'm not hurt. It was a soft drink. Okay.
Original formulation or new formulation?
Well, I guess they're going to go back to cane sugar now, or sugar cane. So, anyhow, I had a date last night. It was perfect. Tomorrow I'm going to try grape. Okay, almost done here. At the job interview, they asked me, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I said, I think we'll still be using mirrors in 5 years. All right.
We're getting worse.
We're getting worse, yeah. What do you call a typo on a headstone? A typo on a headstone. A grave mistake. Now, I like this one here because I could use this one at some of the restaurants I go to. Host at the restaurant says, do you have reservations? And I will reply, yeah, but I think we'll still eat here. And the last one, this one here you can tell your kids. You can actually tell the sex of an ant by dropping it in water. Did you know that one? You can tell the sex of an ant by dropping it in water. If they float, they're a buoyant. If they're float, they're a boy ant. Okay. All right, we'll quit before somebody shoots me. Anyhow, thanks for watching this week. We hope you had a good week. We hope your family is healthy and safe. We'll see you next week. Take care.